The world's a pretty big place. With our busy lives, no reasonable person can be expected to keep up with the biggest headlines each week, so I'm here to do it for you. This is Tony Pearson coming to you on behalf of WHIP with this week's Big Picture. This episode, like last one, is going to be focused on the election, especially now that it's pretty much over. After this, we're going to be done with it. So, without further ado, here's the deal. Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election. He took key swing states, including Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The West Coast, New York, and other blue states simply were not enough to stop him. It was a very close election, too, in which the popular vote may not have actually matched the Electoral College vote. I cannot stress that whole may not thing enough, as the individual votes are still being counted. A bunch of hasty news sites ran stories that the popular vote went to Hillary very quickly after the election. Others are now stating that Trump might have actually edged her out. But the truth is that the count simply isn't here yet. Right now, the Associated Press reports that Hillary beat Trump in the popular vote by about 1%, but Trump is currently rising a bit as more votes are counted. So we don't really know yet. Since Tuesday night, a lot of stuff has happened. Other countries, including Russia and even the Philippines, have congratulated Trump for his victory. Protests have broken out around the country, including here at Temple. Most of these have been peaceful. Some of them have become violent. Oddly enough, so far I have seen more confirmed reports of assaults on Trump supporters than there have been the other way around. A number of videos showing this backlash towards Trump supporters are currently going viral, one of which actually shows a man with a Trump sticker on his car being beaten before his car is stolen. As far as the Trump and Clinton campaigns themselves go, Trump is just now beginning to lay out some of his plans. Most of what is available online right now is fairly speculative. However, a common theme has been that his actual plans/views are somewhat less extreme than expected. For example, Donald Trump stated that he felt people should use the bathroom they feel is appropriate when asked about the transgender bathroom debate at a town hall style event in Manhattan. That said, his current list of possible cabinet members and advisors includes a number of literal climate change deniers and other billionaire businessmen such as himself. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with. Meanwhile, at the Clinton campaign, the loss has been blamed primarily on the last-minute escalation of the email scandal. So, that brings us just about to today. There have been other events, but that's the gist of what's going on. Now, for the rest of this episode, I would like to talk about why this happened, because I was surprised by it. I definitely thought it was possible, but I was surprised. For a lot of people, this completely blindsided them. It's important to talk about it because Trump didn't just win a little. He won with almost half of the votes. And by the time they've been counted completely, it might actually be more. A lot of people are really scared right now. And for good reason, at least based on this, because it would be really, really scary if all of those people who voted for Trump are racists, which is what a lot of people seem to think they are. But that's the thing. It doesn't seem like that's the case. Trump actually did better this election with African Americans and Hispanics than Romney did in 2012, according to many exit polls. Additionally, less Republicans in general voted for Trump than did Romney in 2012. Clinton, at least as far as we can see right now, simply lost the overhead that Obama had, and then some. So, it seems like racism, bigotry, and hate are probably not what won this election, although I'm sure they were involved. So, what did win it? From here on out, I've got to say this is largely speculation and interpretation. I'm not an expert. But these are some thoughts that I've heard floating around the news and the internet from people who are experts, and I am inclined to agree with them. This surprise election happened the way it did due to a bunch of mistakes from a bunch of people, particularly the GOP, the DNC, and our mainstream media at large. So, let's start with the GOP. For the past 8 years, they've been riling up a voter base with alarmist, conspiracy-type controversy. Issues such as Obama's place of birth were frequently brought up, even after they were resolved. Even today, I personally know people who think Obama is a Muslim, even though it has been proven time and time again in public for everyone to see that he is not. And even if he was, it wouldn't matter. But it illustrates the effect that this had. When the Republican Party tried to rein in its voters for this election, it seems they couldn't. These people took the messages to heart. The GOP successfully made these people skeptical and untrusting of the establishment and the mainstream media, even when it concerned themselves. When they tried to run candidates like Jeb Bush or Ben Carson, Donald Trump represented change outside of these things, and people bought it. Now, let's look at the DNC. The DNC showed throughout this election that all they cared about was getting their establishment choice into the White House. If there is one useful piece of information that came out of WikiLeaks, it is that the DNC did pretty much everything short of actually stuffing ballots to ensure that Hillary would win the nomination. They gave her every single advantage they could. When the public caught wind of it, they just kept at it. Hillary ultimately won, and each point after this where the scandal was brought up, she would brush it off and talk about something else. I know this because I watched the debates, I watched it get brought up, and I watched it get brushed off. It's a shame because if she would have talked about it, maybe she could have converted some people. Instead, she did the opposite. This made even more people skeptical of the establishment. Additionally, multiple stories came out of various media collaborations with the DNC to achieve Hillary's election. In one case, Hillary was literally given debate questions ahead of time. This is of course not allowed, and when the public found out, the person involved was fired. But nothing really happened to Clinton. Combined with a lukewarm campaign promising very little actual change, and Clinton lost the trust of many without drumming up enough hope and passion for change to make up for it. And yet, that is still not the biggest mistake made with this election. The biggest mistake was made when most of the mainstream media wrote off this election as a win for Hillary months in advance. For months, journalists have made it standard practice to mock Trump supporters. We've mocked their appearances and dismissed them as racists and sexists. We've rejected their feelings as invalid and refused, in many cases, to even listen to their arguments. Hell, we've refused to even listen, in many cases, to what their argument even is. Instead, the mainstream media as a whole has been happy to label these people as racist, xenophobes, etc., and dismiss them before giving them an opportunity to speak. A huge portion of this country has been denied a voice in the media in this way. What remained created an echo chamber, and that echo chamber created the fantasy which I believe ultimately won this election for Trump. Quoting a fantastic commentary on the smugness of the press by CBS News' Will Ron, the fantasy is, and I quote, "the idea that if we mock them enough, call them racist enough, they'll eventually shut up and get in line." It's similar to how Twitter works, a system where people who dissent from the proper framing of a story are attacked by mobs of smugly incredulous pundits. Journalists exist primarily in a world where people can be shouted down and disappear, which informs our attitudes toward all disagreement. In this election cycle, I think our culture managed to leave behind a huge chunk of this country. In striving for progressive ideals, which absolutely should be striven for, we've forgotten to actually talk and engage in dialogue with those who disagree with us. Instead, we formed a society where people with non-mainstream views are scared of being attacked for these views, and instead remain silent and grow resentful. Those are the people who stood to benefit from any kind of change, and those are the people I believe voted for Trump. And it's not their fault. If I believed I lived in a country where I couldn't open my mouth for fear of being vilified, I'd probably vote for whatever or whoever I thought would fix that too, no matter how extreme it was. This brings me to my final point. The worst part of this election's results, at least for me, actually wasn't the results themselves. I supported Clinton. And I did not like Trump, that's true. But when Trump won, I saw so many people go to Facebook with hatred. Hatred for the half of American voters who did not see things the way they did. Calls to literally end friendships. Don't do this, guys. Nobody is converted by being screamed at. They're just silenced. Exile does not change minds. Despite the powerful feelings and real, raw, justified fears around this election, power transferred peacefully. That's more than many countries in our world can say. People voted for Trump for so many reasons, even if some are extremely difficult to understand. For some, it was because voting for the establishment was just unthinkable. For others, it was for personal, financial reasons. However selfish you might think that is. Some people have been misled, and others are probably getting exactly what they wanted. I'm sure that genuinely bad people do exist too, but I'm confident they are in the minority. At the end of the day, about half of this country was so fed up for whatever reason that they went with the wild card. Now we have to work on addressing why that happened and unifying our nation. Anger is okay. Being sad is okay. But the progress we need won't happen with violence and hate. It just won't. At one point in time, I saw the phrase "love trumps hate" all over Facebook. What do you say we take that one to heart in the next few months? I'm Tony Pearson, signing off on behalf of WHIP. I'll be back next week with more of the standard big picture news. Stay safe, everyone.